What's going on, everybody? I'm Bowen Belmer, and this is episode 15 of Brain Power. Welcome back. On today's episode, we are joined by David Johnston, the one, the only. If you're familiar with Morpheus, you absolutely should be familiar with David Johnston. If you aren't, give this episode a listen. Go back to episode 4, give that one a listen as well. David is a massive contributor to Morpheus, and we would not be as far along as we are without David. So super excited for you to listen to an update from him as to where the Morpheus ecosystem is right now, where he sees it going in the future. As always, if you would like to support Brain Power, please give us a like and subscribe on YouTube or whatever other platform you're using to consume this. It really does go a long way. And if you're interested in even further supporting Brain Power, consider staking to our Builder subnet on the Morpheus Builder dashboard. With that being said, and without further ado, here is David Johnston.
I'm trying to free your mind, but I can only show you the door. You're the one that has to walk through it.
You're listening to Brain Power.
All right, everybody, welcome back to Brain Power. This is episode 15, and special guest joining us today, David Johnston. If you know anything about Morpheus, you are familiar with David, and if you're not at all familiar with David, well, one, you might be living under a rock, but two, go check out episode 4, which we did back in January, which was the last time David joins the show. And today we're basically going to do an update as to where is Morpheus today relative to where it was 5 months ago. Spoiler alert, there's a lot has changed. There's a lot of things that have developed and continue to be developed, and then get into what the roadmap looks like looking forward with some really exciting upcoming things. So David, I will turn it over to you. I mean, first of all, how are you? How are you doing? Anyone who follows this probably sees you on the road, and we were just talking before we started recording about how right now you're getting some relaxation, which is really nice and well-deserved. But how have the last 5 months been?
It's been a whirlwind, man. Last time we talked, I think builders had just gone live, and now there's over 100 builder subnets live on Morpheus. I just checked more.org. We've crossed 1.5 million more staked, which is an incredible milestone. I mean, there's only like 6 million emitted and 4 million claimed. So 1.5 million is like a quarter of all. More have been staked towards builders. I mean, that's just huge.
I think you might have gotten muted, David, but no, that is awesome. That's one thing that I love about the Morpheus community and the project so far is a huge proportional share of the tokens are used for a productive purpose. Like with a lot of projects I've been involved in or maybe been an investor in, it's kind of like, yeah, maybe there is a utility for the token, but most of the people holding it are speculating and kind of just sitting back on it. That, I mean, yes, I'm sure there's obviously some speculation in our project as well, but there's a really high proportion of those tokens that are being used for direct utility, or I know of a lot that will maybe very soon be used for direct utility based on some of the things, being developed. So that's awesome. I know also, David, that you've been like around the world in the last, couple months. Can you just talk about a couple of those stops that you made and maybe like some of the things that you saw and did while there?
Sure. Last few months since we talked, I guess you had Token 2049 was over in Singapore, and also hit the road again to Singapore for the whole Super AI event. And that coincided with the network school visit and speaking there, as well as the community hosted a really cool decentralized AI day in Kuala Lumpur. So yeah, there's been a lot of Southeast Asia. Got over to Switzerland in January, spoke at crypto finance conference there. So yeah, it's been like almost every few weeks, there's been some amazing event. And around almost every major conference, like Permissionless just recently in New York, there was a decentralized AI day hosted by the community, right? And it's so cool to see people putting those together sort of on their own, and then just inviting all the participants in decentralized AI to show up and talk about what they're building. So I would say the big shift has been from like, come build this stuff to come use this stuff.
Yeah.
Right? Because now you've got the developer API live, and so it's easy for people to access Morpheus inference without having to spin up a node, without having to touch a smart contract. They can just grab some keys off openbeta.more.org and in 1 minute literally be running an open source model for whatever they want to power.
Can we actually linger on that for a second, David? So this is something that would be a pretty big development from the last time that we spoke. The last time that we spoke, all of the various contracts, like the broader contracts for code, capital, compute, and builder subnets, were the V1 versions had been pushed live. But at that point in time, there were not yet light clients for people to access those contracts. Can you kind of just talk about when I say light client, like what exactly am I referring to, and kind of what is our vision for that as a community?
Sure. So I spoke about this in Austin at the demo day, as well as at Consensus in Toronto, is we're getting to that point where in 2024, the community really built out the infrastructure level. Now it's time to move to the light clients. When I say light clients, I mean websites, explorers, APIs, anything where all of the infrastructure is in the back end and the user is just using a normal app, a normal web application, and they don't need any technical skill to access it. And if you look back at the Morpheus white paper, the authors really highlighted this as the value of Morpheus, is you don't have to run a local node, right? And if you compare this to the experience of Bitcoin or Ethereum, most people don't run a full node, right? You could, but there's only about 20,000 Bitcoin full nodes, maybe a few 100,000 full nodes of Ethereum, mostly running validators so they can do staking, right? That doesn't scale. Most people don't want to run infrastructure. And so most people experience Ethereum through MetaMask, right? People experience Bitcoin through blockchain.com, web wallets, right? And that's okay. That's how we get to the mass market. And so even in the white paper, the authors were like, hey, if you create a network, right, it won't just work locally, it worked for everybody in a native web context. And so that's kind of the next step. And that's really what the community's been focusing on in 2025.
Awesome. Yeah, and I know I'm personally really excited about that because it opens the door for me to use a lot of this stuff as somebody who's not as technically inclined as other people working on the project. And seriously, guys, from a compute perspective, the API gateway is awesome. It is extremely user-friendly. I mean, you can spin up an API key and plug it, either use the provided chat interface or plug it into another platform you might be using. For example, I plug mine into Cursor currently to do my little vibe coding sessions that have not yet built anything, but are fun to experiment with. And you literally can go from not using Morpheus Compute to using Morpheus Compute in like 5 minutes. And a lot of people listening to this too might have even found this show because of me reaching out to you on Twitter. I'm doing a ton of like grassroots campaigning around this. There have been instances where we're having a conversation and somebody says, okay, I'm interested in using this, but I don't really want to generate a key. I can generate him a key and hand it over to him in literally 30 seconds. So give it a try. Also, while we're in open beta, so while the community is testing this light client, all of the inference is the cost of it is being covered by the community. So the community is essentially donating the inference in the meantime so we can continue to build these light clients, scale them up, try to make them as bulletproof as possible. And I implore anyone listening to give it a try because it really is the next step of like taking... From my perspective, taking DAI from wizards like David's hands and then putting it into like my hands where I can like do stuff with it. It's very cool. So shout out to all the developers working on that. Seriously. So that kind of covers that initial light client. That was the first one to ship. There, my understanding, David, is that there's others being worked on. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Sure. If you haven't checked out more.org lately, there's a beautiful new dashboard for builders. And it makes it literally one click to register a subnet. So if you want to create a subnet, you don't have to develop a smart contract. You don't even have to go into an Explorer and touch the smart contract. You can literally just fill out a form and say, here's the name of my subnet. Here's the address I'm using to own this subnet. Here's where I'm describing it. And maybe here's the website, and push the button. And it will sign that transaction, broadcast it to the chain, and boom, it will auto-populate onto the dashboard on more.org. So if you go to more.org, you click the link for dashboards and pick the create a builder, it is that easy. So that's another example of, I guess, a light client for builders. And we want to get to that point with all the dashboards where you can do any of the actions with no technical knowledge required. But again, I would highlight that, we're going from come build Morpheus to come use Morpheus, right? And I think a lot of the development going forward is going to be focused on that, like the end user, not necessarily the code contributor or the capital contributor. All of those aspects will be there, but their purpose is to serve people a personal AI that they can use and access. Like that's the benefit. That's the payoff, right? You look at the history of Bitcoin, it's very similar. The first couple years, it was just all about bootstrapping the system. Like, come and test this thing out. It's got a lot of bugs, check it out and, run a miner. And a lot of people did. And that was the whole focus. There was no price of Bitcoin initially, right? The wallets were really janky. You really had to be a developer, but eventually it graduated out of that season or that part of the cycle and got to, okay, now we have web-friendly wallets and now we have, easy access for people. And we're coming up on the 2-year anniversary of the market.
That's crazy. I can't believe that it's already come up in 2 years. Yeah.
I remember reading it in September of 23, be like, this is going to be really cool. And here it is, right? We're finally getting to, that sort of stage. So a lot of what the community has been focused on, it's like, okay, what's the next step for Morpheus? Got compute, capital, code, builders. Great. All the infrastructure is working. The API is working. The infra is working. Like it's doing the thing it's supposed to do. But the last piece is really that like client for the individual. Like, what does it look like for me to have a personal AI? So I've been spending a lot of time on architecting the Zion era, right? And if you've gone to Morpheus, you've checked out the Git book, there's a great explanation of all the different eras of Morpheus, whether it was the Genesis or Frontier or Homestead or Metropolis. Now we're in Serenity, right? Adding new capital sources. That's going to be another big deal here in the next few months. So as we've moved through those eras, like the payoff is a personal AI, right? Escaping the matrix and getting to Zion, right? And so I love that whole theme and narrative is really beautiful. So yeah, that's kind of what I'm focused on right now is like, okay, let's tuck away the last pieces of the infrastructure and get focused on providing a personal AI to the end user, right? Hooking together all the agents and the builders and the pieces that have come together. It's just like Ethereum's story is very similar. They spent the first few years getting the consensus mechanism to work, getting the EVM to work, like getting Solidity developed, right? But those weren't the end state. The purpose of those was to enable smart contract developers, right?
Yeah.
And ultimately, that's the payoff is for smart agents to serve people.
Totally. And I think as we head into this next era, what's so exciting about it is it really highlights the like goal of Morpheus, which, as you just said, is really to deliver the ability to have a personal AI that specifically works for you or a specific agent that works for you. Yeah. And it highlights how, and this is something that comes up in conversations I have with people quite a bit, is like the token and the crypto aspects of Morpheus are mostly a means to an end in order to deliver that end product. And Ethereum and smart contract platforms are really the same thing. I mean, the only thing from my perspective that's really about the money and being hard money is Bitcoin, but Bitcoin solved that problem, which is great. Now you have smart contract platforms really being about the smart contracts. And now you have Morpheus really being about the intelligence, about the ability to have an AI. And so that's, I think, going to be really highlighted here quickly. And it kind of differentiates the project from maybe other crypto AI things you might be hearing about that are not necessarily focused on the AI portion of that, you know. Yeah. That being said, the capital is obviously extremely important, and it is kind of one of the portions of the back end machine that allows the whole ecosystem to function. You did mention briefly that there are capital updates. This is something I want to spend a lot of time on today. Can we talk a little bit about what those updates are? I know that there's going to be a V2 of the capital contract relatively soon.
Yeah, it's been in development. It's been in community testing for a while. Now it's out for audits. If you're an auditor, it's a community auditing process. Reach out on Discord. We're always engaging new auditors in the project, so that's always welcome. But I would say the core of V2 for the capital contracts is really moving from staked ETH only to integrating Aave, right? And what that does for the project is it gives it the ability to add wrapped Bitcoin as a source of yield. It gives the ability to add stablecoins as a yield source. Because if you used Aave before, you can deposit these assets. It gives you a Aave version of that token. So AWBTC, AUSDC, right? Whatever. And you can use that token effectively. That's where the yield is coming from, right? And so just like today, we have Lido and staked ETH, and every day it peels off that little bit of yield and sends it into the project. We've developed a very similar model with Aave, where now you can extend that to Bitcoin and stablecoins. And the cool thing is that's a much larger market, right? Ethereum's a couple $100 billion, which is great. But Bitcoin's a couple trillion, right? There's hundreds of billions of dollars of stablecoins. And what it does is it opens up the project for people that aren't just Ethereum bulls, but want to hold stablecoin exposure. They want to hold Bitcoin exposure, right? And the project ought to be neutral and unopinionated about how users want to hold their exposure, right? If they're bullish on Bitcoin, great. Stake the Bitcoin on Aave, and then deposit that token on Morpheus. They can hold the same amount of Bitcoin that they held before, and they're just contributing the yield, right? So I think extending that model is really important because it sort of makes it for everybody. It's the ultimate in cross-chain collaboration between the different communities, the different tribes, the different, maxis is like, okay, your Bitcoin maxi, great. Keep your Bitcoin and contribute the yield and get this additional benefit, right? The same for a VC, right? Let's say the market goes into a correction. They want to be sitting on a bunch of stable coins. What do they do with them while they're sitting on them, right?
Oh,
great.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, right now, okay, my options are I can either sit on a stable coin and at best I can just put it in a stable coin market. Maybe I'm earning 4% APY, something like this, which is relative to the TradFi system. Great. I mean, it's better than the, 10th or whatever, 1 BIP I might be making in a traditional savings account. But if I can instead say, okay, I'm going to be holding this USDC anyway, I'm now staking it into Aave, so I'm earning my APY, but then I'm restaking that into the Morpheus contract where, let's say it's a comparable APY. Let's say it's, 5%. Great. Now you're earning a premium. But even if it was like flat to down in terms of APY, let's just say. But then I'm able to take my More token emissions and I can then stake those to builders who are building the products and services on top of the network that I am indirectly or really directly investing in to help prop up the value of the thing I'm investing in. And oh, by the way, the people who are building these things are incentivized to give me some type of value for staking to them. And now I'm creating opportunities from a capital perspective there. I mean, as a X funds guy, that is to me just like, wait, I can take, in theory, no principal investment price risk on the USDC. I can then reinvest my yield in something that is effectively a venture investment into DAI generally. And then not only that, I can take that investment and then reinvest it into specific builders that I identify within DAI and say, okay, not only do I think DAI is going to be massively successful, but now I think these specific builders within DAI are going to be massively successful, and they are incentivized to provide me some type of value for doing so. I mean, it's amazing. Like I think anybody who really understands markets and believes in the development of AI, DAI, and crypto will look at this and say, this is such a no-brainer to be involved in. It's really exciting. And I think with that combined with the stablecoin legislation that's going on in the United States, combined with the amount of institutions that are going to be involved in stablecoin markets, the fact that Aave is a first mover, so when these assets go live, if Robinhood, who I don't know if you saw, they announced a layer 2, if Robinhood issues their own stablecoin, I can almost guarantee Aave will have a market for it quickly. And same with these other institutions. So I personally find this to be one of the most exciting things for the ecosystem. that's coming up. And can you talk, David, on the other side of that? Because this is a question that I get a lot, and I know you'll be able to eloquently describe it. So when I stake my Bitcoin, ETH, USDC, whatever it is, and I'm bifurcating that yield. So now that yield is going to the Morpheus protocol, what is happening with that yield?
So all of the yield goes into protocol-owned liquidity, right? So remember, there's no treasury in Morpheus. There's no foundation. It's not getting sent to any developers. It goes into that protocol-owned liquidity, and 100% of it is used to buy more tokens out of the Uniswap or airdrome pools, right? So it's providing this constant source of demand for the token, right? And we're talking, millions of dollars a year of yield flowing in that forming the purchasing power for the protocol. And then what happens to the more that it buys? Half of it gets locked up for 16 years till Epoch 2, and half of it gets burned forever. Right. So there's, built-in scarcity in Morpheus that I haven't seen in almost any other project. And there's a long-term plan for how you support block rewards 16 years from now, 32 years from now, 256 years from now, right? The block rewards effectively never end without breaking that 42 million hard cap of the number of tokens that will ever exist. So it's sort of a brilliant mechanism, almost like recycling part of the coins, right, into that future block reward and taking the other part and burning them to increase the scarcity. So at a minimum, there'll only ever be 42 million more. And then because they're constantly getting burned, it's going to be something less than that, right? But the block reward's not going to run out, and there'll always be a reward for building agents, providing compute, providing capital. So it's almost like an infinite fair launch. Right. Yeah. It's like an unending system. It really, the chart goes out for 256 years, but it keeps going. That's just as far as the chart goes. Yeah. Right. It effectively never ends. Right. So I think that's really unique to have such a long-term perspective, because when you talked earlier about this idea of permanency, like I can own my AI and I can own it forever. In the same way that if I hold a private key, I own those Bitcoin forever, right? Because as long as the network is operating, I know I have rights to that asset in the Bitcoin context. Now I can have that same thing for my AI. And like you said, that's the big differentiator, is I'm not renting my intelligence like you are from Google or Microsoft or OpenAI. You can own your AI. You can own your intelligence when it comes to Morpheus, right? And that's what I want, right? I think about my own personal preferences is like, I've got a bunch of photos that I've been saving for a decade or two, and I never want them to go away. They're my kids and all these special memories. And and I pay a subscription basically to store them in a cloud, or I put them on a hard drive. But, having that now apply to the rest of my mind and my knowledge and all the outputs of my prompts, which are like deeply personal or business related, like I want those stored forever. And that's another aspect that people sort of overlook, is Morpheus has IPFS built into the node already, right? And so there's a storage mechanism to go along with the compute mechanism. And I'm sure that'll continue to get developed out over time. But all the building blocks are there for me to own my AI forever. Right?
Yeah. And no one else. No one else have access to it. Even if they would do it, they can shut it off. Yep. We've said this a bunch of times. My new ethos looking into the future is any intelligence that can be shut off by force will be shut off by force. And so if you can't shut it off by force, which is what you're describing here, and only you have access to it, or the people with the keys have access to it, it can live forever. And I still don't think people are really, even myself, grasping the implications of this. Like, for example, if you were taking like your child and having them do like work to learn using AI tools. Like I know, for example, we have a builder subnet right now focused on literal schools designed around AI inference teaching people. And you could record those sessions throughout your kid's education. And then when your kid is like, 20, they want to say, I want to have a conversation with myself as a 5-year-old. Their agent would be able to replicate that. because it would know, well, this is how you talked at that time. I have all of this data that only I have access to, and it's going to create all of these like insane capabilities that you just wouldn't have had otherwise, and won't want someone else to be able to dictate for you.
Well, and that's a really interesting line of thought. And just kind of riffing off of that, imagine I give myself or my kids gifts in the future. Right? You could use lock time in the Bitcoin context to lock a Bitcoin for 20 years, right? For 10 years, for certain amounts of blocks. And I might forget about it, but my agent will never forget about it, right? And it's like, what are the assets or gifts that I developed in the past, right? And when are they coming due? And, it's in the schedule.
Yeah, you could like record a video delivering it to them, but you could be like 30 years deceased and they're still receiving it because the agent won't forget.
They're still getting birthday presents from grandpa.
Oh, that's amazing. Yeah. I hadn't even considered that.
Hey guys, I'm still around, like, in digital form. Here you go.
It's going to scare the crap out of them. But no, that's amazing.
Well, the funny thing is it'll become normalized.
Yeah, right? True.
And so you could set that up for like 100 years,
I want
to be passing out, gifts to your progeny.
Yeah, there's an experiment that I want to run that I just haven't done yet. I certainly need technical help to do it, but we've talked about this in the past. So my father was as a radio show host and has been forever, and I have like thousands of hours of him on air from when he was in his early 20s, and I want to train an agent on his recordings so that he can interview himself. Because now at 60, he'd be able to interview himself basically at 25 or whatever it is, and like he'll probably be one of the first people to be able to do that, because we just happen to have like thousands of hours of those recordings. But like everyday people will be able to replicate that type of thing in whatever capacity they want, whether it be written data, video, audio. Well, you know what? We'll be able to, David, on episode like 700 of Brain Power, go back to the intelligence potentially from episode 15, and it'll look hilarious by comparison, I'm sure.
Sure. Like which things have been built out? How far has it come? 100 subnets. That's cute. I remember when we passed 1,000 or 10,000.
Yeah, whatever. Exactly. One thing I want to linger on too on the capital side that I think is maybe be overlooked by people who, or might be initially overlooked, is also the value of non-ETH tokens from a price perspective as well. Because right now people will notice that because like ST-ETH yield is the only yield that the protocol is currently diverting into that protocol owned liquidity, meaning that those ETH more pools basically are gaining that liquidity. That means that the more price is pretty reliant on ETH price, because as ETH price is going up, or would be going up or down, it'll be directly impacting more because of those liquidity pools. But if you now pull that away and you also add USDC, which does not change in value, you're just purely adding underlying value to that Morpheus pool, not relying on the price action of another asset. And so I think that that's something people are not totally thinking all the way through yet, or at least it wasn't the first thing I thought about when I started seeing these contracts being worked on, and how it opens the door for just pure value add to the ecosystem without saying, well, it's value add as long as Ethereum is performing flat or up.
So that's an important item to touch on. This really shifts the competition from how much staked ETH has been contributed to how much yield in general has been contributed.
Yeah.
And for those curious, the way that works in the smart contract is it looks at the amount of USDC equivalent value. Mm-hmm. So how do you compare Bitcoin and USDC and Ethereum and 5 other things? Well, you convert them all to a USDC value, right? And every day or every period of time, you can be like, okay, based on this period of time and the USDC value at this moment, we're going to hand out the yield based on that. So it'll be very interesting to see how it switches up the competition. Mm-hmm. Right? People will probably move between different types of yield. If I can get a higher yield right now in wrapped Bitcoin or on stables, they may well switch to staking that. Or it's possible that people, they have their core thesis and they've got the asset and they never want to flip out of it because they don't want tax exposure or something like that. And it may be very sticky, the type of thing they put in. So it's going to be interesting to see how that evolves, but it'll move from a staked Ethereum competition to a generalized dollar value yield competition, regardless of the type of value you're putting in.
Yeah, which I think is going to be a massive net positive to the protocol in terms of protocol and liquidity at the very least. Absolutely. What else is going on, David? Is there anything else that we want to highlight? I guess. I mean, I should say, when I say that, it makes it sound like there's not a lot of things going on, or those are the only things going on. There is literally so many things that I can't keep track on a daily basis necessarily of who's preparing to ship what. So I guess a better way of phrasing that question is, what else are you excited about at the moment?
So we've seen the integration with ELIZA OS and Morpheus and providing inference to all of those agents. Since we last talked, there have been a ton of new agent frameworks, forges, ways to create agents. And again, Morpheus is agnostic, right? It wants all agents to succeed, right? It will index and discover any agent in any protocol anywhere, right? So people often ask, oh, isn't this competing with Morpheus? Like, no, like Morpheus's goal is to reach as many agents as possible. It'd be like asking if a new website competes with Google. Like, no, they're going to index that one too. They're going to make it discoverable. They're going to make it reachable by a bunch of people. And so, I think people are starting to grasp, the more agents that come out. Since we talked, the MCP protocol, the Model Context Protocol, has become extremely popular, and that's giving people a way to connect agents to tools, agents to servers. Now, Google has released A to A, which is agent-to-agent protocol. So you have an agent talking to another agent. So we're kind of filling in all these gaps for, my personal, Morpheus agents can be more and more powerful based on how many agents there are it can reach and how many tools it can use. And so as the universe has gone from dozens to hundreds, now there are thousands of MCP enabled servers and services. My agents can be able to reach virtually anything, right? Which just makes it more and more powerful. Like, it's Metcalfe's law, right? It's a network effect, right? The more nodes in the system, it's a n squared. It's a multiple of that number, right? It's not linear as far as the value of the system. So it's really cool. That's sort of great validation to the work that the Morpheus community has been doing to sort of set up all those building blocks and then make that available. So if you've checked out some of the tools in the ecosystem, they are now integrated with MCP. You can put your MCP server into a Morpheus registry and make it available to all the agents in Morpheus. So yeah, there's so much going on. So we talked about capital. We talked about the new protocols that are shipping, the expansion to stablecoins and Bitcoin. Yeah, it's been busy to say the least, but it's really cool because it's all sort of coming together, and it feels like this is the year where all those pieces click together and we finally get the outcome.
Yeah, I have a follow-up onto this. So far, you've appeared on Brainpower basically every 5 or 6 months. So if we try to fast forward 6 months from now, by the time you appear on Brainpower next, which might be sooner than this, but let's assume it was 6 months. So now we're at end of year. What does a successful Morpheus at that time look like?
So you could look at different metrics, right? $3 billion have gone through the capital contracts, which is insane. And a bunch of people have adopted Morpheus just as a capital mechanism. You could look at the amount of inference, right? How much compute is being used, how many people are using the API. That might be a good way to think about it. But I actually think the number of people that reach Zion, the number of people that have a personal AI is sort of the ultimate measure of Morpheus, because saying inference is the point of Morpheus is sort of like saying hash power is the point of Bitcoin. Like it misses the point. Like, yeah, hash power is important in Bitcoin, but the point of Bitcoin is to be able to send money over the internet. It's to be able to use Bitcoin.
Have hard money. Yeah.
Have hard money, store of value, right? That's the payoff of Bitcoin. its consensus mechanism, the blockchain, hash power, those are all building blocks that get you to a point where somebody can actually use Bitcoin. And so with Morpheus, it feels the same. Like we've been building all the building blocks, but the payoff is like how many people are using a personal AI that they own, and how many jobs is it doing on their behalf, right? Might be another way to measure it. Today, I use agents a couple of times a day. Mm-hmm. But I see in 5 to 6 months, I might be having agents doing hundreds of tasks for me, right? Because it's going to snowball from, oh yeah, it's reading my email and giving me a report, or, it's adding some things to my calendar, to, oh, it's doing all of those complex things and it gives me analysis every day. And, oh, I'd like that done for these 5 things too. I can see it really snowballing where I have agents taking a huge number of tasks on, because what is it doing? It's giving me leverage.
Yeah.
It's multiplying my ability to get things done. And I think everybody's bottlenecked by, they have a bunch of ideas, but there's only so much time to execute against them, right? And you got to filter it down to, I can just execute this one thing today or these few things today, right? But we're about to get unblocked and be like, no, I can get all of that done, right? As much as I can imagine or think through or describe or articulate. So hopefully 5-6 months from now, we hang out in December or January. Like that's what we're looking at, is you've got your AI and it's doing all these tasks on your behalf, and it's really starting to snowball. And I think what's going to be really amazing is those connect together. As my agent can talk to your agent.
Yeah.
And I've created a trusted relationship here. And yeah, give Bo anything he needs from the drive. Give him, he's looking for assets. You don't have to wait around for me to give you permissions on that logo file. Like, here you go, right?
Sure.
And so I think that's going to be really powerful, because our agents can work while we sleep. They can work out while I'm on vacation. They can work on the weekend. And all of a sudden we won't be bottlenecked by, we need this guy to look at the thing and give us the feedback, approval, whatever. If our agents understand our goals and also our trusted networks of connections, it's going to get really powerful. I often think I've met something like 10,000 people at going and speaking to over 100 conferences this last decade. Mm-hmm. And I remember a fraction of them, and I remember details about a fraction of them. But what if my agent did perfect follow-up from every conference and knew the context of everybody else that's in my network, people I've met that I want to work with, that I want to collaborate with, but maybe I don't remember they're a cybersecurity expert, and that's what I'm working on right now.
Yeah. Well, think about, I was just thinking as you were talking, if I had like a Luma invite to an event and my agent can cross-reference who's signed up for that event, and then it can provide me like a ranking system of interactions I've had with these people, or like follow-up. So I can say, I've met, this guy, this woman, we emailed about this 3 years ago. I don't remember it, but here's a refresher. Yeah. That's amazing.
Well, and take it one step further. All right, here are the 50 people that are in context for what you're working on right now. It's going to go talk to their agent.
Yeah.
So it's not that you're spamming those 50 people. Is if they have an agent, all of a sudden, like, yeah, of course, I'd be happy to help you with that cybersecurity task. And if their agent can do it while they sleep, or they're on vacation, or when they didn't have enough time to respond, will all of a sudden unlock sort of this massive untapped potential of these existing networks, right? And so I think we need to stop imagining, new use cases and just improve the things
that we already have.
We already do, and that we already have. And right now we're just blocked on the amount of intelligence and time we have to spend on them.
That's a really interesting way of looking at it, that I hadn't really thought about it in that way. I love doing these episodes. Every time. Yeah.
How many do you know? How many people do you wish you could work with right now that, I just don't have time. I got to call that guy. I got to follow up.
Or you miss the window, you meet someone and then you the follow up never happens. And then you kind of miss the window where it's appropriate to do the same level of follow up you maybe could have done otherwise. Totally. Oh yeah. I love doing these episodes. Every time I have you or some of these other awesome guests on, it just reframes how I'm thinking about everything that we're working on. And it pretty much always comes back to you're not thinking big enough. Like you're thinking too in the box of what this can, like the implications of this are and what it can do. And it's so much wider than that. Well, David, with that, I think that's a good jumping off point for this time around. I really, really appreciate you jumping on. I know the community does as well. And we'll look forward to that follow-up episode, and we'll kind of pair them up and see how we did and how we're doing.
100%. Sounds great, Bo. Good to see you.
Yep, you as well. Thank you.
I'm trying to free your mind, but I can only show you the door. You're the one that has to walk through it.
You're listening to Brain Power.